The Motorcycle Diaries, directed by Walter Salles in 2004, depicts the journey of Ernesto Che Guevara and his good friend Alberto Granado as they travel up the coast of South America in the 1950s. Despite Salles being criticised for overly romanticising Guevara, who after the events in the film became a globally known political figure, the film was based off his journals and narrates the voyage of the two young medics on their bid to see the world. Sharing characteristics of typical road movies, this film is not about the destination of the middle-class travellers, it's about the journey itself and the evolution of the protagonists. Some critics suggest that Salles breaks the boundaries of road movies. Where most directors magnify the sole importance of a vehicle in transit, The Motorcycle Diaries unconventionally also recognises the significance that human resilience can have on transformation. Common themes in this film are brotherhood and friendship, social class and oppression, estrangement, displacement, growing up, and helping others. During this film, both Ernesto and Alberto face numerous challenges that aid self-transformation. One sequence in particular is very significant and symbolises the themes of friendship, social class, and helping others. To add some context, at this moment in the film, Ernesto is volunteering at the San Pablo leper colony in Peru. The colony is divided by the Amazon River, with doctors and nuns living on the north side, and the lepers who are being cared for on the south. Previous scenes show Ernesto defying conventional practice by not wearing gloves when shaking hands with the sick people. On one evening, the doctors and nuns hold a party for Ernesto's 24th birthday, which they celebrate on the mainland. At the party, Ernesto makes a speech of thanks in which he voices his political views for the first time in the film. It is this speech which then prompts him to take a night swim across the Amazon to be with the people he cared for on the south side of the river. The sequence that shows Ernesto crossing the Amazon is a turning point in his self-discovery and is therefore a critical part in the film. The remainder of this presentation will analyse the cinematic techniques Salles used to create significant effects and convey the themes in this realist narrative. Once the full sequence has played, the analysis will take place.
Llegó. ¡Hijo de puta, llegó! ¡Llegó! 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 ¡Hijo de puta! Yo siempre supe que iba a llegar. Yo siempre supe. Hijo de puta.
The theme of brotherhood is amplified at the start of the sequence with Alberto and the doctor standing on the edge of the bank shouting for Ernesto to come back to land. Their cries are the main focus of the audience as defiant Ernesto ignores them and continues his journey across the river, ignoring that his asthma might hinder his physical ability to reach his destination. Urgency is depicted by the aggressive tone in Alberto's voice, followed by a close-up where the audience catch a glimpse of his worried expression. Alberto's concern shows the love he has for his dear friend. The cuts between the shots are relatively quick, which increases the pace of the sequence and adds tension. This raises questions to the audience if Ernesto will turn back, or if he continues, will he make it to the other side? Furthermore, Alberto, who at the start of the film was arguably the more dominant character of the two, is frustrated with being ignored. Perhaps this sequence is not only showing the transformation in Ernesto, but also a shift in the medic's friendship. Ernesto is growing up and is no longer the impressionable adolescent that will be dictated by his friend. This is represented in the long shot that shows Alberto's small figure in the distance, symbolising the loss of his power. Salles uses a handheld camera to zoom in and draw the viewer's eyes to Ernesto as he swims. The camera always stays to the right, not breaking the 180-degree rule, so the sequence is really easy to follow. The mise-en-scene also reinforces the focus on Ernesto. The use of darkness around him and the lack of light on his features ensures he is the focal point of attention to the audience. The lack of props strips back any distractions, therefore the audience mainly focus on the use of sound. The cinematography used complements the diegetic sound of Ernesto's breathing and the lapping of the water. As the camera zooms, the sound of his gasps increase in volume, highlighting his struggle to the audience. As mentioned before, in conventional road movies, it's the use of the vehicle that aids the transformation of the characters. However, Selez acknowledges the power of the human body. Ernesto's sole determination and resilience carries him across this physical and metaphorical border despite the struggle of his asthma. Once again, the destination is not the importance of this sequence, it is the journey that takes him there. Some critics have acknowledged how instead of a vehicle, it is Ernesto's body that gets damaged on his bid to complete his journey. His body is sensitive to the environment, which can trigger him to have an attack. The use of darkness connotes the physical pain he will have to endure before he reaches the light at the end of the tunnel. The next shot shows one of the patients swiftly moving into the forefront of the camera as it pans to meet him as he comes to a halt at the riverside. The jitters of the handheld camera adds realism and movement to the shot as it feels less commercialised and more personal, which makes the film feel more like a diary entry, allowing the audience to feel like they are on the journey with the protagonist. As the man comes closer, the depth of field becomes shallower, restricting the focus in the background of the shot. Although the audience can see others gathering in the distance, this is not the primary focus. A medium shot shows the contrast in clothing between people on the south side to the doctors on the north. This man is dressed in a vest, in comparison to Alberto and the doctor in formal shirts. His face looks tired and concerned. Another key contrast is the lack of electricity on the south side compared to the bright lights surrounding the hall on the north of the river. Selez uses costume and lighting to represent the difference in living conditions between the upper and lower classes. A point of view shot shows the north side in the distance. The dullness of the lighting represents the distance between the two camps. Interestingly, this sequence doesn't show a mirroring long shot from the north side of the river, which further suggests the significance of the journey from a starting point and not the destination. The lack of light the lepers have on the south side suggests to the viewer that they cannot be seen from the mainland at night, perhaps representing how marginalised groups in society are often overlooked or seen as invisible. In the darkness, Ernesto is swimming across the river. This symbolises him as a bridge where his actions are closing the gap of inequality in society. Next, an eyeline match shot is used, expressing to the audience that what the man is pointing at is Ernesto in the water. Interestingly, the next two shots in the sequence are mirrored, which perhaps connote that although people can be upper class, lower class, healthy or sick, at the end of the day, everyone is human and has the same core. In the first shot, there is lots of movement with doctors and nuns gathering. The shaky camera moves across the doctors, pausing at Alberto to focus on his cries and concern for his friend. Next, a nun dressed in white moves into shot to show a medium close-up of her worried expression. A low angle connotes the status of her being on the north side of the river. Another shot of Ernesto swimming is sandwiched in the mirrored sequence, reinforcing to the audience of him bridging the gap. Mirroring the nun, a man from the south side walks into frame. The contrast in clothing is once again prevalent as the nun stood out against the dark background, whereas his clothes are earthy toned and more neutral in colour. In contrast, the camera angle is more level to the character's height. As the film is a diary of Ernesto's memory of the trip, perhaps this shot shows the man as Ernesto would see him, as an equal. The symmetry ends with a shot of more people gathering on the bank and then back to an extreme long shot of the north in the distance. Quickened cuts between the doctors on the north side, people on the south, and the river create pace, which alongside people saying he's tired and cheers of encouragement put the audience on the edge of their seat. An extreme close-up as the camera moves forward through the water at a low angle shows Ernesto as a powerful figure pushing through the water. His sound of wheezing becomes louder, highlighting his physical struggle. This shot symbolises Ernesto as breaking down personal but also cultural boundaries. The river represents the fluidity of cultural identities, people, and the importance of humanity. Some critics have described the crossing of the river as a self-baptism that was not just self-transforming, but also world-transforming because of the actions Ernesto took later in life. An objective point of view shot is used with the camera placed behind Ernesto's head to give the impression that the audience are onlooking the scene. Water laps over the bottom of the camera, giving a tunneled view. Diegetic sound complements this shot as for the first time the cries of the people and the sound of wheezing are in unison, giving the effect that we can now hear what Ernesto hears. For the first time in this sequence, non-diegetic sound is used. It is a very quiet ringing and doesn't take away from the diegetic sound, however, it sounds uplifting and warming, which complements the happiness the characters feel as Ernesto rises from the water. Furthermore, it can be noted that Ernesto is wearing a vest, much like the lepers in the south. His clothes present him as an equal. He has left his aristocratic background behind. The last shot of the sequence is very powerful and moving for the viewer. A medium-long shot shows Ernesto being helped by his friends as they walk into frame and lead the people back to their accommodation. The use of a high angle from behind gives no special attention to Ernesto. He is now one of the people. Perhaps this shot gives insight into the future leader he is soon to become. In contrast to previous shaky handheld shots that are at eye-line height, this frame is still with no movement. Celeste gives the impression that something strong and secure, perhaps a spirit, is overlooking Ernesto. This shot in the sequence doesn't feel like a diary entry because at this moment Ernesto did not know his fate. The shot fades into black, giving the effect that there is an end to something as we know it. This editing effect symbolises the growth and transition of Ernesto from a young man to a leader. It is the start of his political journey. To conclude, this is perhaps one of the most powerful scenes in the Motorcycle Diaries for both Ernesto and the audience. The use of cinematography, mise-en-scene, editing and sound are critical for displaying the themes of brotherhood, social class and most importantly, the development of Faustino as a person. As previously stated, this sequence portrays conventional characteristics of a road movie. It is the journey across the river that was the significance of the sequence. It displayed actions of bravery, physical struggle, and finally, compassion for humanity. Thank you for listening. Please find the bibliography at the end.